right. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. I am Mind Runner, aka AA Ron, and I am super excited because I have one returning guest and one new guest, both of which are life partners of awesomeness. And I'm talking about Kitty Famtastic and Swank Famtastic, or I should say Swank and Kitty as the way they are sitting on your screen. Anyways, really excited to come back. We've got a lot more to talk about, not just ADHD, but mental health in general, and also just kind of the things that they have been up to. If you have been checking out the awesome Instagram and other videos that they've been putting up, I don't know, recently, the recent video is basically 80s nightmare fuel, where Dexter Michael C. Hall is chasing after Kitty and a couple other people. Then it's kind of like if you eat some bad ice cream before you go to bed and you reminisce about your trapper keeper. But,
that's accurate.
Kitty and Swank, thanks for coming on, and great to have you back.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I think this could be a lot of fun. You guys have been making me laugh with a lot of your videos, especially the difference in teaching how to drive the what do they call the car? The
cozy coupe.
The cozy coupe.
Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff. I learned a lot. I'm still learning a lot about ADHD, and what's cool is, as a teacher, I also make a lot of cool connections where I'm like, that makes more sense. But I just want to kind of put this out there. We touched on this last time, but Kitty, you could start off with what are still some misconceptions that people have about living with ADHD, and maybe the Swank, living with someone with ADHD?
I think first off is that it's impossible, right? People wonder, because we're always talking and forgetful, but I would say that we have such a good balance that it doesn't really, to me, it's just how life is for us. Mm-hmm. Might be a better question for you, since you're the one who sees it.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's impossible.
Misconception. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was like, wait a minute, it's not impossible. Is that
so? The misconception is it's impossible, that it's
impossible.
Yeah. Would constantly need to remind me to do stuff, or that. Oh, yeah.
I don't constantly. I mean, it's not all the time every day, but there is something to be said for checking in with her about some everyday things. Like, I will ask her at random points throughout the day, hey, did you eat?
I knew you were going to say
what
that.
What did you eat? Have you eaten enough? Mm-hmm. And how long ago was it? Which, like, to me, that's just normal. That's every day. It's not like some weird thing.
But some misconceptions people have, though. Well, I did a video on that once about how people think that those of us with ADHD are unable to focus on things or to complete tasks in a timely fashion. Mm-hmm. See, now I've been ruminating on your question, and now I'm answering it. That's how my brain works.
Yeah.
Love it.
But that we're always scatterbrained or can't keep a routine, which, let me tell you, having a routine is everything.
Nice.
Also that, because you hear a lot about hyperfocus and interests, that anything that we fall in love with or enjoy doing, that it has an expiration date. And while that's true for some things, it's not true for all interests. Like, I've always been interested in music my whole life, and I don't think that's ever going to change. Mm-mm. So I think those are some of them.
Yeah.
What do you think? If there's any that you can think of?
Misconceptions
about
living with someone with ADHD. Here's one. So the whole notion of ADHD is that the H is hyperactivity. I think that's part of the title. That is so far from what people think hyperactivity is. She's not constantly bouncing off of the walls. She's not that regularly.
Inside here, though.
Yes.
That's where it is. It's inside here.
Everybody thinks that a person with ADHD is the kid in school who cannot sit still. And some of them are. But for her, she can sit still just fine. But her thoughts are going 17 directions at 100 miles an hour all the time.
That's like that paralysis of your mind. What's the term you use where you're
ADHD paralysis?
Yeah, ADHD paralysis. There's a great video you did where you showed what it looks like, and you're laying there on the bed just like this, and then you did like what's going on in your head, and you got like going on. I've seen that with my students. Like one of my students was diagnosed with ADHD, but she was clearly not one of the ones what people misconstrue as she was never jumping off the walls and jumping up and down, but she would get a book and she would sit there and read. And she wasn't just reading, she was in that world that she was reading about. And we would we get to the point where we would be getting ready to turn the lights off to go to lunch, and she's still sitting at her desk going like this. And we're like, Freya, come on, we gotta go. And she was aware. What's great about it too, though, was she was very hyper aware of it too. And she understood, and she would actually sit in on the IEP meetings, and she would actually come up with like solutions to manage her own thing. And I think that it's kind of in a long ways it's similar to you, is that it's, and with like I talked with Ruckus, is like it's kind of also a superpower as well, that if you can harness, if you can direct, I mean, it doesn't come with consequence. I don't say consequences, but it's a neurodivergent. It's different thinking. And if you can harness it, you can really do some really awesome things. And for both of you being very creative people, I think you could really, I don't want to say weaponize because that's a bad word, but you can harness that power and come up with some really cool things. And it's just, exactly. Do you?
If I'm not creating, I'm sorry, I just interrupted you there.
No, go ahead.
If I'm not creating, I'm going crazy.
Yes.
Because I need that outlet. And people with ADHD, a lot of us, if not all of us, tend to have incredibly creative minds. So our imaginations are, I almost like to say, childlike, which makes it nice when I'm playing with the kids, because I can so easily immerse myself into that imaginary world. You know, like in Hook.
Yeah.
You know, when he can finally see the food.
The food,
You can see that food and fling it at you, you know?
It's the food fight. Yep. I love when the little kid goes, "There you are, Peter." Yeah, like
You're
back.
doing it, Peter.
And Swank,
called Ricky Starks Rufio one time, but when I still had Twitter, and he threatened to cancel me.
He got mad.
What? Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Oh,
I want, if they do a Hook remake, I want him cast as Rufio. That because he would fit. Just get the red streaks. You know, I can see Rufio going like, "Hey, Hook, hooky."
Oh,
right.
Like
Perfect.
He's Ricky Starks is really like one of his most favorite guys.
Oh, Ricky's great. I want to see where they're going with him in this Bullet Club thing. Oh, hold on. We're talking wrestling. Let me put the banner up here. But yeah, I do want to see where they're going with this Bullet Club Gold, and I think they got some opportunity. Obviously, the guns are now with them, so we'll see.
I never would have pictured Ricky as a Bullet Club guy. I know that they're coming. Well, they're coming after him now, but like
he needs
the
friends.
BCC would go after the people they wanted too, and successful that way.
Interesting. Are they got? Yeah, is this all an initiation? But see, Ricky's too much of a personality to. We saw this with Team Taz. You're absolutely right. With Team Taz, he that was one of the things, is his personality was almost overshadowing Brian Cage. And Brian Cage was supposed to be the number one. Now, Brian Cage in the Mogul Embassy is 10,000 times better than the Brian Cage with Team Taz, I think.
Yep. It's been a lot of growing and trying to figure out where people should go over the past, it's almost 4 years now. But it's definitely really exciting where everybody is now. I just kind of sad that Ricky's not a pillar because he didn't come in. He just missed it.
Yeah.
One of the pillars, you know?
Yeah, he's like the next stone. Like, yeah, he's like the, he's kind of the next one up. But
he's the cornerstone. You can't take it out because then everything will collapse.
But he's up there with them. He is and he's definitely like 10 years from now, he's going to be another one of those guys that we talk about.
Guys.
Yeah, he's going to be, when we now talk about Flair, Piper, Austin, The Rock, 10 years from now, we're going to be talking about Starks and Darby and OC. We're going to be talking about Orange Cassidy. We're going to be talking about, and I thought it would have been cool if when one of those segments when the 4 pillars were having their promo battle, if all of a sudden you heard the Doctor Will See You Now come out.
Right.
Seriously.
She's been there too.
Can you imagine her? And see, that's another thing. Again, this is not a wrestling podcast, but
we have to take a moment.
We do have to take about. One of the things I love about AEW and why I trust AEW a lot is, although I think they botch a lot of debuts sometimes, like a lot of times the debuts fall flat, and sometimes I think it's because they maybe were expecting the crowd to know who this person is and they don't. But all you got to do, they're the definition of give it time. If you look at where the Dark Order started versus where they were with Brody Lee, and then even now, even though they're kind of down to just the 3 again, and I guess Stu Grayson's gone off with somebody at the group on Ring of Honor, they became like eventually they became such a beloved group. Britt Baker, 2019 Britt Baker, I couldn't stand.
Same.
She was the exact same.
I was like, I don't like this woman. Get her off my TV.
And they had her on commentary. Yeah, they had her on commentary for some match, and she was just terrible. And it was just like she was. And what I think it was is she wasn't comfortable with her character. She had the in-ring stuff down, but she wasn't comfortable, and she didn't really work as a baby face. And even now that she's kind of that baby face, she hasn't changed the character. Right. Like she's still Britt Baker. Yeah, and I think that's important. Like Moxley, what I love about Moxley. D. What I love about Moxley is
if she sees that we don't do that, she's gonna come pull our teeth out. So
exactly.
Give him the Danhausen.
D.
He does a great Danhausen.
Yes, very money. That much money there, Swanks. Swankhausen.
Very nice, very evil.
Oh,
well,
why?
Because he likes teeth, and Britt Baker's a dentist.
I need sacks of money.
There.
Bring me sacks of money so that I can do the wrestle, but no swearing. No swearing.
Here you be.
Because ADHD.
Yeah.
ADHD.
Yeah. That's funny is that actually was, it was like part, like that was like a bit, I just realized that Danhausen is like if you take Nosferatu and Latka and put them into one person, that's Danhausen.
Thank you very much.
With a healthy dose of Sideshow Bob.
Yes.
He's got that sinister streak too. Mm-hmm. Yes, but he definitely has that Andy Kaufman thing on.
Yes, very much. So ADHD. But that's kind of something interesting too. And I feel like, if you understand where it's coming from and how to manage it, you could actually harness it for some really awesome creative endeavors. And is it hard to kind of manage that to focus it into something, or do you feel compelled to you got to have that outlet or you're going to go crazy?
Both, I would say. Since I'm a stay-at-home mom, my days are often filled with a lot of repetition, and it can be hard because I can get bored. And when I start throwing my creativity into it, it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
But would you say I like almost always have some kind of project going on, whether I'm always filming stuff. I haven't played my piano in a while, but I usually play music. as long as I have an outlet, I'm okay. But if I get really bored, that's when things start to kind of go for me, because there's no dopamine when you're bored. And you can't make your brain produce it when you're just sitting there. You have to find ways to get it going. Mm-hmm. And he's good at helping me with that.
Yeah. Swank, do you find it sometimes hard to keep up?
Yes, depending. So let me try to explain this. If she is really into something,
like hyper focused,
yes,
on something,
sometimes I'm part of it, and we will do things together. Other times she is so hyper focused that I need to step back myself and say, she's doing her thing, and check in and let her just, I just have to let her cook, to borrow a term from David.
Well, I like that. Yeah.
But literally I have to let her, like, and it's not any fixed thing. Like a few weeks ago, we were having company over and we were working on cleaning the house and getting the house ready. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to start working in the kitchen. And she's like, I'm going to tackle the playroom. And if I stepped foot in that playroom for the next 3 hours, it was, I got this, go do something else. And it's not
malicious. Yeah.
It's not harsh. It's not even negative. It's just, this is my thing. This is my space. So I stood in the kitchen in the doorway and I said, hey, you good? You need anything? No? Cool. And I went back and started cleaning more in the kitchen.
What happens when I am broken from a deep hyper focus? Because this is an important question, because sometimes it has to happen. But what can happen sometimes if I'm very heavily focused on something and I get pulled away from it?
It's not good. It's not good. I'm not going to go into detail, but
it's
well, I mean, just
it's where the giant child comes out.
Yes, it's like taking your kid's favorite toy away.
I can relate to that.
I think we all can relate to it, but it's much harder for her in the moment to logically think like, oh, okay, I need to stop doing this. And so you have to brace yourself for that. I don't want to call it a tantrum, but
well, it kind of is.
It kind of is.
It's it can be almost like its own sort of panic attack.
Yeah.
Because the brain's so set on, I'm doing this feels good, I'm doing this feels good, and then yoink, and it's like, what the heck? Which is not the word I would say, but
it's like you're in the middle of something and the power goes out, and you're like, where was it?
Yep.
But what's amazing is, and it really just in talking with you, but also just kind of things that we've talked about before, Katie, is it seems like the two of you, what really works for both of you, is Swank's understanding of that, your understanding of it, and it seems like, I mean, that's what a partnership should be: is understanding each other, letting each other cook, but also being understanding too. Kitty, do you find sometimes that you that there's things that it's hard to explain to Swank some of the things you're going to, or has he learned? You feel like he knows you so well that you almost have an unspoken kind of rapport?
Most of the time, he gets it. It hasn't come without a lot of work because, and we might be able to get into this.
You're human.
The whole reason I got diagnosed is because of Swank, because he saw the symptoms in me. But we kind of have a system. I have tells for when things might be going sideways, and he knows kind of how to derail that. And I've also taught myself ways to kind of just take a moment. It's okay. Everything's going to be fine. And through the years, at least for me, I feel like we've gotten better and better at communicating and him understanding. But even still to this day, if there's something I've been trying to explain to him and I can usually find something on TikTok or Instagram that explains it perfectly. And I've sent him things even recently, and he'll be like,
That makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like, there it is.
Yep.
Mhm. But without him, I don't know if I would have been diagnosed because I had no idea that I was
And that
living
was-
with this, and it was not fun.
That was years ago.
Yeah.
Was that before Kelly?
Yeah, it was before. It was after we got married.
Yeah.
So we've been together for 20 years. We're about to celebrate our 17th wedding anniversary.
Woo! Congratulations.
And we're still here and smiling.
We haven't killed each other yet.
No, fortunately, he's very, very patient. And even though my ADHD, especially before I was medicated, tends to be more angry and stuff, I'm never the type to direct it towards people. You know, I'm more a person to go stomp around my room and scream.
The pillows have been yelled at a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
I will say that. And those poor pillows, I mean, the things that they have heard.
Maybe we should get Kitty some wrestling buddies, and
Oh yeah.
Well, we have those big fists. No, I don't want to give you big.
Oh, the Hulk fist.
Never mind.
John Cena.
Never mind. I'm not going to give her that.
Kitty smash.
But I don't know if you were interested to know like what it was like for him in those early days, because you were a psych student in college.
Yeah. Well,
or you had studied psych in college.
Yeah, I have a psych degree.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I mean, so when we got married, it wasn't for a few years after we got married that I really started to think about some of the behavior that I observed, that I was like, there's something off, like.
Do you remember any of the?
Well, there are a couple of things, and I can look at it now and I can go, that was a hyper focus at the time.
Like beating.
Like, so she got really into beading and making jewelry and trying to sell it. And like for 6 months, maybe a year.
Me.
And it was like,
Yeah.
It was like, hey, we've got a few spare dollars. I'm going to go buy some jewelry supplies. And I was like, supportive of it. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a hobby. You enjoy it. Why not? But then like, it just grew and grew and grew. And I think we still have some of them, because once it wasn't a hyper focus anymore, it was nothing. It wasn't even a part of her brain.
The idea of beating to me now makes me feel sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
It's too, no.
And so so after the fact, I looked at that and I said, where did that even come from? And what happened to it? And I started reading more about ADHD in adulthood, because at the time I was like, oh yeah, ADHD is hyper kids.
Yeah.
It's, that kid had too much Kool-Aid. Look at him bounce around. That's what I thought. And that's even for someone.
That's what I thought too.
I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I still came into it with that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, the anger side of things. Like, for most adults, when something doesn't go your way, you go, oh, that sucks. Mm-hmm. Move on. Right? Mm-hmm. For her, years ago, before diagnosis, before medication, if something didn't go her way, it was like, not just, oh, that sucks, move on. It was now, whatever caused this to happen is the bane of my existence, and you're going to hear about it. And I was like,
become nuclear.
I was like, whoa, hey.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about this.
Even when I reflect back on those times, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was very reactive and impulsive. Yeah. So, and I even see on old Facebook posts, sometimes I will delete old comments that I made. I'm like,
why did I say this? Yeah.
So is it something like this? Is like if you take away something Kitty's interested in, it goes like this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty accurate.
It's really interesting. What you're saying and describing, like I'll get into something, and I think like a lot of creative minded folks, you'll get into something, and at the time like your juices, your mojo's flowing, you're in a flow with it. But if you step away from it too long, when you try to go back to it, it's almost stale. It's almost stale. But like a lot of folks, it's just I'm not into it. But for someone with your neurodivergence, it's almost like at the time, it's almost like a phantom limb. But then if someone takes you away from it, it's like they're cutting off your arm.
Yes.
But then if you step away from it, then you try to come back to it, it's like you can't reconnect that arm anymore.
It goes from a phantom limb to a forward limb, and your body is now attempting to graft on another arm.
Exactly.
That's
how I feel about beating.
Right. That's her with beating. And now that was
just
years and years ago, but that was one that I was like, all right, let's talk about this. Let's you and I talk about it. And then like I talked to her parents about it, and I approached her.
And they have a very close relationship. So that's very, very nice.
And I approached her and I said, look, I think you may have ADHD. Here are XYZ. We should talk about you going to talk to a doctor about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that first conversation was very resistant.
Oh yeah.
She was like, I don't have that. That's
stubborn.
That's made up. I don't think she actually said that's made up, but it was very like, I don't want to do that. I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well let's sit on it for
table it. Yeah.
I am talking.
Yeah, really. It's okay.
Normally I'm the quiet one.
He is. He's excited.
No, please. Absolutely.
And so when we went back to it,
I just sounded very pushy. I'm sorry. People pleaser. See, I'm apologizing.
Yeah, it's all good.
I'm sorry.
But so then we, I talked to her again later on, and I said, hey, even your resistance to it is kind of indicative of having it.
I was in denial too.
Let's talk to the doctor. And so she ended up going to a doctor, and it was maybe 6 months of seeing the doctor and the doctor talking to me and family and friends of hers, and like full 360
That's
degree.
Right. We had to,
like we all had surveys to fill out and like journals to return to the doctor. And she was like, yeah, she's had this for a long time. It's severe.
Yeah, they told me I'm a severe, there's like 2 types of ADHD and I have both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was with me through all of that. And and there were hard times.
I want to talk about 2 things, but the first thing is, Katie, how relieved and Swank, how relieved were both of you when it was diagnosed and it was almost like an aha moment for you? Like, how did that feel? Like, did it feel like a relief?
Yeah, it was life-changing for me, for you too.
Oh yeah.
Because once I started taking, it took a while to find the right medication for me. And there's a few different options out there. And when I found the right one, I think what really hit home for me was the first time something happened that normally would have upset me. And let me tell you, it wouldn't have to be any big thing. I was just so upset all the time. It just rolled right off. And I'm like, whoa. Wait a minute. And
where didn't that come
from? I somehow, I have no idea how I finished college without being diagnosed. I took English because I didn't know what to do.
That's high school.
So lots and lots, right? Well, in high school, I was more concerned about pleasing all my teachers and my grandparents. Yeah. So that motivated me. But I don't know how I got through it in college. I really don't. Once we started dating, you helped me stay focused. But on this side of it, for the past, we'll say like 12 years or so, 14 years maybe, it's so much better because I have so much more self-control. I don't struggle with anger issues. Maybe, like once a month it happens, but overall, I don't struggle with them the way I used to. I take constructive criticism really, really well because I like to improve and do better. And I even had a friend who corrected me the other day, and she apologized. She's like, I'm so sorry. I people get mad when I do that. And I said, thank you, because I would rather be correct than walk around saying, the wrong word or something.
Yeah.
So these are things that my meds have helped with, but I still struggle with time management.
Yeah, I mean, we're late to a lot of things.
As a conversationalist, if you're not used to talking to me, like, he can say, I had a really great day at work. And I'll be like, oh, that's awesome. So blah, 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 blah. And then an hour or two later, I'll say, I'm so glad you had a great day at work and that this happened and it's wonderful, to show like I was listening, but I have to process it.
But in that hour and a half, I've now moved on and I'm like, wait, did I tell you about that? Oh, yeah.
But he's used to it.
Yeah.
And my best friend is the same way. So when we're all together, if he is listening to us talk or whatever, he can follow us. Most people can't, because we topic hop constantly.
I should also clarify that we're late to a lot of things, but it's not all her. We have 2 boys.
Yeah.
And they make us late to a lot.
4 and 10. So I mean.
Well, kids. I mean, fine. It's like, and kids, it's funny too, because kids can be like the golden excuse sometimes. Like, we'd love to come over to your house, but the kids,
Yeah,
we gotta go. We gotta
go.
The thing.
The thing with the kids,
stuff.
the thing. He's got the thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
We gotta do the thing. Get the thing for the thing.
I'm an extroverted ADHD person, and I love social situations until I don't, and then I gotta go. I gotta get out.
Yeah,
kids.
The kids. I mean, I'd really want to stay and play some more board games or talk more politics. But yeah, we gotta. The time is bedtime. Yeah, it's
gotta get the kids to bed. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. Well,
they early sleeper.
They got an early morning tomorrow at 2.
It sounds like you really have the benefit of a great support network and having that too. And how about the kids? How do they react, or are they in on the management of that, or do they show any signs of that as well? Or?
Our older son, he is such an independent kid. He's just, both kids are used to me being the way that I am, because it's all they've known. Our eldest is definitely more in tune with like how I'm feeling. But I'm also really in tune with how he's feeling. And we're not sure. We don't suspect that he has ADHD at this point. He's so focused on these individual goals. Like, I'm going to play guitar for, however long here. Now I'm going to go bottle flip. Now I'm going to go draw these pictures. Like, he doesn't seem to have the characteristics so far. Our 4-year-old,
he's a 4-year-old.
Jury's still out.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like trying to see, trying to measure the rain in a hurricane or something. It's funny too, because as a teacher, we have a lot of training, and a lot of times the training is just somebody wrote a book and they are now an expert because they wrote a book, and we're all going to pretend like they're experts. And we had this thing where it meant well. I think it meant well, and there are some studies, and Swank, you probably know better than I do about like how children are with alternative seating. They spent all this money on alternative seating, and where it's like wiggle chairs or little bouncy balls and stuff like that. And they were but the mentality was, we cured ADHD kids with bouncy chairs.
You can move all you want.
Oh, you a whole new ADHD. All of us. I shouldn't say all of us, because it's never good to say everybody's the same. But we love solving problems. Like, we are problem solvers. Give us something to figure out, and that keeps the brain so busy. It's so satisfying. So you give a kid, and I can see why
you give
they would see it would be
chair, and they're going to want
fun,
to move.
but they're going to want to move. They're going to figure out all the different ways they can sit on it, fall off of it, bounce on it, or bounce it off of it. Like,
If I take this rolly chair and I take this wiggle chair and I put them next to each other and I can wiggle the chair and the rolly one and it'll go across the room. That's not ADHD. That's just kids being
That's
kids.
exactly. I had the funny thing too is exactly what you're saying. It's like when they did that though, they only bought enough like for only like 4 chairs per room and like 1 bouncy ball. So first thing, every kid wanted to have the bouncy chair.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm like, hey, Mr. Burton, I thought there were 4. There's only 3 wiggle chairs, and then you see me at the teacher's desk going, "Yeah, I know. What's buddy?" But and then the bouncy ball, you might as well give them dodgeballs. I mean, it's like,
right?
I had to. They're all doing a test, and I had to walk across. I kept my door open. I walked just across the hall to the classroom across the hall. I no sooner set foot, and all of a sudden I heard punk. You know that familiar sound? I heard punk. I turn around, and one kid sprawled out on the carpet like this, and the other, and you see the orange ball bouncing. So yeah, it was a nightmare waiting. I mean, it meant well, but it kind of going back to what you're saying, and this is something I've seen as a teacher, is what people thought ADHD was kids bouncing around. But if you really think about it, even for us when we were kids, to sit in a desk for 7+ hours as a normal, regular, straight out of the box kid, that's insane. To expect you to sit there. Now, granted, you could be a people pleaser and try, but it's nuts to expect that. We would have so many. We would have go touch grass breaks, where it was basically I'd take them out for like a 10-minute recess, and I always say, "Hey, we're gonna go touch some grass." Especially now because in the last few years, so many students they have their own Chromebook,
right?
And there's so much technology incorporated. Now, I'm cool with technology incorporated in education, but just like anything, there can be too much. But I found, like, kind of going back to the ADHD, like my one student who would sit there with the book, or I'd have another student that just had to look up certain things. I had one student that was obsessed with the Titanic, and he tried to incorporate that in every assignment. And he's like, hey, can I draw the Titanic? I said, well, we're doing fractions, and so I would try to find a way for him to, like, okay, here's the iceberg. This much is above the water. What fraction is above? Try to get it that way.
That's awesome.
But it's just me trying to harness it. But it seems like in education sometimes we're looking for a quick fix, not a management or of a neurodivergence, but a fix. And do you think that's a misconception? Yeah. Do you think that's a misconception people have, or?
Well, I don't know. See, because we're in New York State, and I don't know about the other states, but the education system here, was always like, New York has the best education when I was growing up. Well, it seems like they have one way of doing things. They do a Common Core, and it really takes away the creativity in math, especially. And Swank and I are both really good at math. And our 10-year-old is very good at math. So he's able to he comes to these answers and he writes it down. He goes, but that's not how we're supposed to do it.
Yeah, I'm supposed to show my work. And it's like,
but if you get to the answer, like, let the creative brain do it. So I don't know that they're doing as much here to help. In fact, I know some kids in our son's class who have ADHD, and I don't think that there has been anything done whatsoever to help him to stay stimulated in class, or to give him breaks, or them. I think there's more than one. But it's something that we should actually, because I am not a school board person, but we do have friends that are. It's something we can bring up to them too, is that, like, we need to consider these kids, and that they'll learn better if you figure out what works for them. And since New York is so strict, you have to teach this way.
New York State
it's so strict.
It's really good at teaching kids how to do well on state assessments.
Yeah.
So then New York State can go, look how good our school system is. 95% of our kids did fantastic on this test that we drilled into them for 2 months beforehand. Here's how you do it at the deficit of any other type of learning.
So
you're preaching
really elementary can get away with it, but once they start getting more upper level, it's
even elementary though, like not to catch up, but like elementary is where that foundation's built, and that's what I teach, and that's where you need that foundation, that and you're preaching to the choir, and it's, I hate to say it, but I think it really is something that's nationwide. What you're talking about with New York, most school districts are like that. There is a pushback here in Virginia Beach district to be more growth oriented, but they're not. But see, and I got jets flying over, but they're much more focused on. They still don't know how to kind of tie it in, because when you tie a financial reward to passing a certain standard, and when you have the higher ups are focused on things that really don't lose sight of what education's for. Because in my opinion, education is about preparing children to be the best versions of themselves that they can be when they go into whatever that is, whatever they resolve to be. And if they want to make sculptures out of peanut butter, and then they're gonna, we want to get them prepared to make the best sculptures of peanut butter, but there's fundamental things they need to know. But I think, when you're trying just for that standard, and you're putting so much, almost like the fate of a school, on how many people pass that, so you're going to naturally create a situation that teaches to the test and not to what the students are interested in. But there is pushback. There is a pushback about trying to find alternative paths of education, and there's a lot of teachers going homeschool now because of it. And it's COVID really opened the eyes to a lot of people, the lockdowns, that there's other ways you can teach, and there's other ways to learn. And so that, I feel like we're not quite there yet, but I think we're getting close to a change in the way the education system works. And anybody on your all school board, anybody that's involved, I'd love to have them on the education podcast, because that's
but sure, you'd love to do it.
I think that would be pretty cool. But it's kind of what you're saying, kind of how you guys, your approach to dealing with ADHD is an example of how I think we as a society should treat everybody, but really, there's that balance between understanding how somebody else thinks, feels, works, operates, but also still maintaining that scaffolding of what's acceptable in society. Because I feel like you risk the pendulum swinging the other direction, because when you have write a student's IEP, some of these IEPs, the accommodations in there are almost ridiculous, almost like unnecessary. And I fear we're setting kids up to wear their neurodivergence on their shoulder, and then when they become an adult and they get pulled over for speeding, are they going to whip out their IEP and show the cop like,
I have ADHD. Yeah. That's why I didn't acknowledge the red light.
Yeah, you can't give me a ticket
on this.
and Swank, with your psychology background, and what are some things you notice just kind of in general in society? Do you feel like we're getting right in society, and what are some things you feel like maybe we're kind of off the or heading towards the iceberg, to go back to the Titanic analogy?
So I would say that what we are getting right, or at least we are working towards getting right, is acknowledging that these divergences exist, and that and we've been doing that for a long time. Like, psychology has been talking about neurodivergent for 100 years, easily. I mean, longer than that. what we're getting better at is not demonizing them. They are different.
Yeah.
They are not bad. They can be negative and a challenge, but that doesn't make the person bad. And society is acknowledging that on a much greater scale, that now you can say, I have depression, or I have ADHD, or I have autism, or any of those things.
I've even seen I'm a psychopath, people with psychopathic who have been diagnosed as a psychopath talk about what it's like. Or
and you can say that without
platform now.
The same. Now, I won't say it's gone completely, but the stigma that was associated with those words 10 years ago is much smaller now.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a tipping point where we can be so open to them that we're not helping them. We're just acknowledging, like, you have this problem, that's terrible. You have this problem.
I accept you.
I accept you. You're not a bad person. Oh, you did a terrible thing. Well, it's probably just because you have the problem.
Yeah.
Well,
we're almost letting them be the doctors. Yeah, it's like we're diagnosing them, but then we're like, well, you have this, so you're going to tell me how to manage it, and you're telling that to a 10-year-old, you know, and the 10-year-old's like, well, I manage it by eating gummy bears, you know, and it's I feel that's probably the best way to put what I was kind of feeling like too, is that we're almost like I don't want to say letting the patients run the asylum. It's because that's different. That's that old kind of situation. But we're, like you said, we're diagnosing it, but then we're not providing the means to help.
Right.
And whether it's go ahead.
Can I interject? Because there's something I did want to say about that is that for anybody who might be wondering how they can help, there's something that I started doing that it turned into a great thing. I think it started, Swank and my friends threw me a birthday party for my last birthday. And we made sure that there was an area, it was at a bowling alley, but we made sure there was an area in case anybody got overstimulated, overwhelmed, because as someone with ADHD, I get very overstimulated and very overwhelmed. And that is also, that's something that can't be prevented, I don't think.
Like on a roller coaster.
Yes.
Yeah.
When we've had people over at our house, same thing. We're like, there's this room upstairs. If you need to get away, it's quiet. No one's going to ask any questions. Just go unwind. And one of the last times we were at my parents' house for some kind of event, my dad comes up to me and he's like, we set up a room upstairs. There's some nice music playing, a couch. So if anyone here, just needs to get away. And I'm like, yes. Because people hear like safe space and then they get all these weird negative ideas. But honestly, so many of us are neurodivergent. Some of us know, some of us don't. Mm-hmm. And even if you're not, you can still get overwhelmed and anxious.
Appreciate a break.
And when you're in a group situation, if you know that there's a place that you can go to that's not a bathroom, let me tell you, going and hiding in the bathroom sucks. And I'm very appreciative to anybody who offers a room wherever it is just to go and take a breather. Mm-hmm. That makes all the difference to people like us. And that's a positive change I've seen in my own life, that, seeing my dad and my parents start doing this too. And maybe that'll catch on with their friends and so on. Change starts with small steps, and then sometimes it catches on. So
I think it does. I think that actually, what's cool about what you said is, I think that's good for everybody, because there might, I've gone to social situations where I'm like, I'm not really into this conversation. I just want to chill. I want to get away from this. Or some people are very, very socially awkward but they still want to be part of they want to honor the party or whatever. And yeah, I think that's interesting because you're thinking about your guests when you do something like that.
Yeah.
And
I don't want anyone to ever feel the way that I feel when I get overwhelmed like that and don't have anywhere to go. And normalizing seeing that somebody that is at your get together, whatever, isn't around you, and they're probably upstairs, or you shoot them a text or whatever, and you find out, oh, they're just taking a break. You're like, it makes you so glad that you offered that to them, because it can make all the difference. And
they feel they'll have more fun and they'll enjoy themselves knowing that there is that spot. I kind of along these lines, I want to ask both of you about this. Definitely Swank with your psychology background, but for both of you, whenever certain topics get brought up, I see sometimes that there sometimes it becomes a fad or a trend, and then everybody wants to just with a broad brush paint everything. I see sometimes autism being among these, where they're the difference between like autism in the spectrum, but then a parent or somebody is reading articles or saw a TikTok about autism awareness, and then their kid throws their Cheerios on the floor and they're like, well, my kid's autistic. And it's almost that fad diagnosis, like you mentioned like the safe spaces where, safe spaces in concept are such a great idea. It's very thoughtful to have something like that. But then when you see when mainstream media and social media just flood everything with these screaming crazy people in a safe space, to the point where even South Park had to do a parody of Safe Space, it gets a bad rap. And I feel like a lot of times ADHD, a lot of different neurodivergence, when it becomes a fad, like it's almost like it becomes a fad, and then everybody just gives it, like the extreme folks give it a bad name. Do you see things like that at all, or is that kind of way off, or to heck with it? At least if it's bringing awareness, then it's bringing awareness, and we'll sort it out.
Stuff too.
Well, yeah, I don't really see it on campus, but I don't talk to anybody on campus.
Okay.
My office is separate from everybody.
Okay.
His own safe space, right?
It literally is. I close the door and it is. I will say, like, there is a lot on social media of this, like, if your kid does this, these 3 things, your child might be autistic. And it's like,
well, they even do it with ADHD.
Yeah, with any of them. And okay, I'm all for people getting whatever treatment they need to get.
Absolutely.
100%. I think that's fantastic. And the more awareness of these things, the better. But the amount of hype videos for them is insane. And that's probably not an appropriate word to use in this context to say that it's insane. But
are they clinically insane? I mean,
But it is. It's like you're talking about behavior that everybody does in a lot of these situations.
Even with ADHD videos.
Yeah. Did your kid stop playing with this toy and pick up that toy after 5 minutes? You should call your doctor. No, I should not call my doctor. My kid's playing with toys.
Yeah.
When there's a lot of them too, with like, there's a lot of good ADHD videos out there.
Sure.
But there's a lot out there too that's like, this is going to make everybody think they have it, which is one of the reasons I started making them, to kind of show things in real time as much as possible, what it actually looks like and feels like, because everybody gets overwhelmed sometimes. I think most people, especially after the pandemic, understand anxiety. Those things have become a little bit more common, but a lot of the other stuff, the intrusive thoughts or the nonstop thoughts that go on, and the being driven by the need for dopamine. It's like we are fiends for it, but it's something our body naturally produces. And that
dopamine. Gotta get that dopamine. Yeah, that dopamine.
You got any dopamine?
Yeah, dopamine.
No. Oh, what are we gonna do?
We got.
I'll pay you Tuesday for some dopamine today.
Yeah, right.
But it's nice because you could just like go walk around the block or something.
Yeah.
I've learned that stretching out is really good.
Okay. Exercise.
Yep. And it's just simple ones. I mean, like I am not like I have to keep up with the kids, you know, but I'm not. I'm the ADHDer who has had gym memberships that I spent way more money on than I ever used the equipment.
Because you were hyper focused on the idea of going to the gym for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it disappeared, and that has happened a few times. And I think that really
learned
happened
our lesson
before diagnosis and before treatment. That like we had a gym membership, we had a aquatic club membership because swimming is really great, and swimming is really cool. But we just spent $150 for a year membership, and you went twice. Now you
got the best snorkel and the best gear and best swims, the water dynamic
mosquito swimsuit.
Yeah.
My goggles are so aerodynamic that I cut through the water, and it's like that's cool. Are you going to go again? If not, then let's talk about what do we do about this. And this was pre-diagnosis for her, but that's another perfect example.
Well, I told you a couple months ago. I told him I wanted to start doing yoga because of how I was reading how good it makes you feel. But instead of starting a yoga or going to yoga class, I started stretching on my own. And, sometimes I follow guides, but I do it every day because I enjoy it. It feels good, but I don't have to if I don't want to. I'm not committed to it, which makes me more likely to do it, which is funny. But it's an easy way to dopamine for me. So I like to do that. Plus, it's good for me.
Yeah.
Getting into a topic that I think is very relevant today, kind of feeding off of the dopamine thing. Lately with all the COVID stuff and the Wuhan and the thing with everything going on, there does seem to be a drop in trust with the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of times, you say the word Pfizer to a lot of people, that means a lot of stuff. But on the other side, it's like a baby with the bathwater situation where a lot of medications out there genuinely help. But then there's also seems to be, and again, it's kind of like with the education system striving for that standard to get money. Doctors, pharmaceutical reps want you to sell their new, pill that, like opobobazole or something like that, like it's whatever it is. And they, of course, the side effects are usually a lot worse. I remember reading an article or something about Crohn's disease, because I had a student in my class that had Crohn's disease, and I'm reading all this, and it's one of those things. It was one of those things that was trying to sell some kind of treatment or something, and I'm reading all this stuff, and the more and more I read about it, I'm like, at the end of the article, I'm like, I think I've got Crohn's disease, and then I go in to see my doctor, and my doctor's like, no, you just got to stop eating the flaming hot Cheetos. That's what you got to stop. But the thing is interesting is that, do you feel like in some cases we might be over medicating or throwing medications at the wall, or like in your case, it seemed like the diagnosis is what took place first instead of, and then they're like, hey, these are some things to help you. And I feel like that's the proper way it should go. But it almost feels like today they're so quick to write you a pill just to just to get you just to get, I don't know, get some kind of kickback or what. I don't know what.
Almost like getting into the system.
Yes.
People over medicated? Absolutely. Yes. That's been a problem for a long time, and I've seen it. And he has too, in our own lives of people that we care about, being prescribed things. I have a friend who was so overprescribed on all of these medications for years and realized this medication was a Band-Aid for this medication, was a Band-Aid for this medication. And she slowly, through the years, came off of each medication and got to the root of her problem. And not one of those medications was what she needed. And that was really scary. And I think people want a quick fix for what's wrong with them. You just, it's hard to be sick. It's hard to be in pain and all this stuff. And so if a doctor writes them a script, they're going to take it. I do know that doctors do get kickbacks. I've seen, I can't go too specific with, I just know there was somebody who the doctor was getting a kickback and put their patient from hydrocodone to fentanyl. The person fortunately was able to get away from it over time. Thank God. Because I mean, so there are doctors like that out there who will just, the place where I go, I notice like their star review isn't that good. And I think it's probably because you can't just walk in there and get Adderall or Concerto or whatever the medication is. Like you have to go through the rigorous process. You have to go through testing and have, like you were saying, the people filling out the stuff for you to just so that they know you're not trying to get your hands on these amphetamines, which is, usually what they.
Sorry to interrupt. Isn't Concerto what Edge and Christian do?
It's also the name of a.
It is. You lay the guy down, you put his head on the chair, and then you hit him. And
Dr. Christian is
I don't know what the medication is called.
It's also a music from a concerto.
Yeah, it'll not. Hey, we're gonna prescribe a concerto for you. It'll knock you out for a while.
Hey,
Dr. Christian.
If Tchaikovsky's involved, I'm happy.
Yeah,
that playing.
You can have medicine, music, or hit in the head by a chair from a professional wrestler. Pick.
See, now you waited to chime in on that, whereas if that came to me, I would be like, "Excuse me, I gotta say this right now."
Yeah. Wait, that's Edge and Christian. That's Edge.
Yeah. I will forget. The thought will be in here, and then it will just plop by the time by the time it's polite for me to speak. So I apologize for interjecting, to people all the time.
I want to ask you a question, but I got to preface this that I don't want to cause any issues with your friction.
Oh, you won't.
But I'm curious. Kitty, what are some things, and Swank, what are some things that, Kitty, you have to manage Swank with? That seems like Swank does a great job of kind of managing, checking in with you with the understanding of your situation. Is there anything where you kind of have to go a little bit and say, oh, that's how Swank is with this, or that's why he does that? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, actually, there are times, especially when I go through burnout, where he has to take on a lot. And I like to check in with him to make sure that everything's okay up here. You have struggled with depression in the past pretty severely. But most of the time, the biggest thing for me is because he's so supportive and he's such a good guy. Every now and again, I need to remind him, this is what I need if I'm having a panic attack. At this point, we're just so in sync and in tune. I don't really think, I check in and make sure that, he's not too overstressed or too burnt out. But we're really, really, really good at communicating. Key to a successful marriage, communication.
Yes.
Just talk to each other. And that really helps us to stay on the same page. And we actually, over our 20 years together, have very rarely fight or argue because we talk things through. Even before I was diagnosed, I just don't have the drive to fight with you. We're good at talking. So
that's huge.
I guess the long answer is not a whole lot, really. No, I just make sure that he's mentally well, and if he needs a break or a day off, if I can somehow help him with that. Sometimes I send him out to boys' night too. I do that. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I think we'll play Dungeons and Dragons.
Doesn't matter what you do as long as you're with your boys having fun. Send your husbands out for boys' night. That is another key to a happy, healthy marriage. You know, men need their guy friends, girls need their girlfriends. It's very important.
I think having space, it kind of goes back to the safe space thing you're talking about, but not less party focused, but like that goes back to communication, and it definitely with relationships, but I think in general with society, if we stop screaming at each other and just listen to each other and really try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, I think we'd get a lot further with a lot of things. And it's almost like we'd rather win an argument than have a resolution. You know, it's like we'd rather than getting along. And it seems like too that we've gotten a little bit lazy with the scientific method on things too. And I feel like a lot of times people get emotionally attached to a hypothesis so much that they don't want to anything that challenges that hypothesis. It's challenging them. And so it prevents them from trying to see another person's perspective.
Yep. And that's a huge problem in society today. Yeah. Huge. People get so offended so easily about everything. And that can even impact relationships.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very, very fortunate that we're just not like that. It's not worth the, you know, I'd rather hear him out because usually what he has to say is pretty interesting. And and usually the things I say are just things I say.
What are some activities you both enjoy doing together? And does the ADHD rear its head in that sometimes, or is it more, are there things like, I mean, other than, I don't mean those activities. I'm not, you know, I'm talking, which that's fun too. But like, I'm talking about like, do you guys obviously you share an interest in wrestling. Do you, movies or
we game together. We're both avid video gamers, but her ADHD does, and not in the way you might be thinking, but in the way we've talked about other things. When she finds a game that she really likes, that is the game that she will play. And I tend to play a bunch of different games all at the same time. Not at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
But on my PlayStation, I'm playing Assassin's Creed. On my Switch, I'm playing Persona. On the Xbox, I'm playing Cyberpunk.
But then there's games like the Ori games, Ori, Blind Forest, and Will of the Wisps. Such beautiful, beautiful games. You would often, like when I play those, he's sit and watch. This is so. But we also too, we love going for walks because we both love nature, and so. Going for walks is great because it allows for conversation and then fresh air when it's not filled with Quebec fire smoke.
Hold on. It looks like I got to switch my virtual background again. Yeah. Okay. Oh no.
It's the smoke.
It's
there it is.
No.
See?
It didn't get quite that color here, but
the one night it did.
Yeah, it was weird. But we usually do enjoy going for walks and the gaming,
horror movies.
Yeah, like
horror movies.
Horror movies.
Not horror movies
or shows.
Cool.
You know, but I think the only time the ADHD gets in the way is that after a busy event, like an exciting night. Like my sister just had her grad party. It was a family party. But the next day I had stuff I had to do and it was very hard because what I needed was to decompress and just relax because I get so overstimulated and keyed up and then I start getting panicky. So if he wants to do something when I'm in a mood like that, that makes it a lot harder. But he's also one of the only people who can help pull me through a mood like that. And he always tries to make me smile and laugh. And that is also very helpful.
We're getting some great advice here, folks. Great advice. What about music? I know, Kitty, you play the flute. And are you both into music? Do you both play? And will there be the Swank and Kitty band? Is it going to be Captain and Tennille, or is it going to be more?
So I play guitar. And then in high school, I played the trumpet. I can still play a little bit and a little bit on the piano. But I like playing music. I'm not great at it. I'm not bad, but I don't have the same passion for performing music that she does and our older son does. So if there is ever going to be any kiddie band, it's going to be you and our older son. And they're going to be world famous, calling it now. World tour 2033.
I don't know if I would want to be world famous. That's pretty.
Kitty and Son.
Yeah, that's right.
Kitty. Now,
It's
see, the
new
thing
Jethro
is,
Tull.
you're
Yay.
very tech savvy, though, so he would be,
Oh, I would be the
mixing
recorder.
sound and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's still very, very important.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely.
But he loves music, though. Like, you're
Yes,
always listening to
listen
music.
to music day in and day out. But performing it, I like it. Sometimes I'll sit and play on the guitar for a little while, but it's not the same as it is for her.
But I get hyper focused on music too. I'll listen to the same thing 100 times.
And then start playing
Swan Lake,
similar to it.
3 straight months. Swan Lake, start to finish.
Everything. That was everything.
Every single day.
There's a reason why Deb and I know the entire lyrics to Judas. I will just let you know that because we've heard it a lot. And her ringtone is Chelsea Dagger. She's a Chicago girl. So Chelsea Dagger was what they play for the Blackhawks when they score a goal. So that's another song that we have on repeat quite a bit. I also noticed that a lot of your videos where you're talking about music, you're playing the flute in your praise team. Mm-hmm. How is church and religion? How does that help your social interactions, your family? Is it much of a factor, or is it helpful? And like, do you find some people that they have their stigmas against churches, organized religion, that they might have a misunderstanding about church?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question.
Or should that be the next time you guys could that be part 3?
Oh, we talk about that anytime you want.
We could talk about church for a day straight.
I had mentioned to the guitar player in the band when we were new to the church about 10 years ago that I played some flute. I hadn't played in a long time, but I just offhanded, just like, okay, maybe. And a few months later, he's like, hey, we want you to come play flute with us. You want to play next week? And I'm like, okay. And then at the same time, my dad joined the band and as the piano player. And the funny thing is my dad's a bass player who dabbled in piano. You would never know because he's phenomenal. He's really good. Mm-hmm. But it was the first time in my life I really felt called into service. It's what Christians say when you feel like God's telling you need to do this, because it's like that nagging feeling like you need to do this. Yeah. And I started off very scared, but I've been doing this for such a long time now. It for me is very fulfilling, and it gives me this feeling of euphoric freedom that I can't feel any other way. This is just the only way. And for me, like I attribute that to the Holy Spirit, and I attribute that to my bandmates, because we all just really connect so well. And there hasn't really so far been too much negativity around it. I imagine if I start growing more of an audience and stuff, that will come, because it's just how it is. But I actually, like, my family attends church there too, and they're very supportive. And even my friends who maybe don't have like a faith that they believe in, or they're not sure, or they still they like the music aspect, and they're very supportive too. So I haven't been met with any hostility so far, which is really that's nice. But I find that that provides peace every single week in my life. There's that we rehearse before the service. So what you see is literally we do that and then we play the service. That provides me this peace every single week that is just, for me, it's for me and for the Lord and for, anyone else who enjoys it, but it's so personal, and it's that time where nothing else can touch me, and it's just a very liberating feeling. So I love it, and I think that's why I'm able to stay so consistent with it.
Nice.
And there's also, to your point about church and negativity, at our church, there has been zero negativity at all related to mental health or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like her ADHD is not even I don't
They're
think
not like out
demons
demons or anything like that. Yeah.
Nothing like that at all.
There's somebody else, one of our bandmates has Asperger's,
Mhm.
and it's not a secret or anything.
Mhm.
And it's not. There's even been talk in the church about how not everybody, but a good number of people support medical marijuana. It's really an interest. We've been to a lot of churches in our life. It's really interesting because it's such a love is the most important thing there, and understanding, and nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect. And so you can go in there and feel like you just had the worst week ever, and maybe you were the worst person ever, and it doesn't matter. You just go in and enjoy some music, and there's people with all sorts of afflictions, and they've never, because I know there are some that are like,
we gotta pray
we're gonna
out
pray it
the
away.
psychological problems.
Our church is more like, we'll pray for a way for you to deal with this.
Yeah.
What can we do for you?
We pray that the doctor's hands are guided by faith and by God. That is the extent of it. Not that we pray that this mind demon is cast out of you or anything like that.
Well, you know how Dogma, Kevin Smith's movie Dogma, at the end when Alanis Morissette, God shows up and just everything's back to normal, cleaned up. That's not at all.
Well, we're human for a reason. Yeah. It's definitely, and what's weird too is like I see when I see negativity about Christianity, and being a Christian myself, it's weird when, like, on social media, when you just even mention Christianity, and I get it, because there are a lot of folks out there that have had some bad experiences. It's kind of like if you go to a bad restaurant, if you go to a bad version of a restaurant chain, then you've made up your mind about all the chains. Like, you get a bad Burger King burger, well, now all Burger King burgers suck, even though that one may have just been the only one that you had, kind of thing. And the Catholic Church stuff aside, there's been some I've seen and been involved where some people, but it's always been the people abusing the church rather than the church being abusive. Like people doing crazy stuff in the name of the church, and almost like filling a psychological need to feel self-righteous for some reason. And then it's almost like a venom that's not really Christ's message about love. And I feel like online it's almost popular, or I hate to use the word hip because I'm really showing my age. It's hip. It's what the kids are doing. Only squares do the other stuff. Yeah, man. Yeah, totally. But I just had the flashback to the 80s nightmare fuel.
Dexter chasing you with people.
No. But it seems like, and that there's a stigma about, and I think it might be just more on like social media, like the empty cans that make the most noise, but there seems to be like a stigma when you mention your faith, and everybody's like, oh, you're one of those, like they almost put you in, they want to put you in that same box as the Westboro Baptist Church people, and they want to put you in the box. Of course, that could also happen in anything, like my dad, bless his heart, retired Navy captain. He worked for logistics for NATO. He works logistics for NATO for a while now. And then he was also worked for a very reputable company named, that basically was part of the military industrial complex, but that's a whole nother podcast. but my dad is obsessed with politics. And so he's almost politics GPT. Like I'll say something, I'll say, hey, I'll post something about wrestling. I'll say, hey, that Kenny Omega match was great. He'd be like, it'd be a great match. It'd be Joe Biden and Donald Trump. We should get them in the steel cage. And I'm like, Dad, come on, give it a rest. Just bring it down a little bit. But I feel like some people are compelled to, it's almost like they want to justify their biases rather than try to understand other people. And it really does come to the baby out of bathwater, where if we say we're Christians, that might not mean the same thing as this person over here, as Joel Osteen or somebody over here that might be doing something that may or may not be good, may or may not be as in the right path. And but it's how quickly people are to just lump everybody into that same category.
Yeah. And I mean, the Bible says that will happen too. Jesus said it. He's like, if you love me, the world will hate you. And it doesn't matter. It's one of those, I know that, that it is one of those point of contention for so many people. For whatever reason, they're so offended by it. And it's like, maybe it's what they see or how it's portrayed, but the way that we live our lives is through love. Yeah. It's like, I don't care what you're doing in your life. That's your business. That's your business. All I care about is Jesus. Do you love him? That's it. That's it. Because, Jesus didn't go around hating people. He didn't go around, screaming hate at anybody except in the temple the one time. But
well, he was angry with the church trying to,
So when people do that in his name, it's like, what would he say about it? I mean, I just
had this image though, when you're saying Jesus didn't go around hating people. I just had this like diva Jesus with the other disciples going, let me tell you about that Judas.
Just I want to spill the tea, but you gotta wait. It's gonna be a real humdinger.
I'm gonna tell you all about it in 3 days.
There you go.
I see you, Thomas. Oh, you doubt me now.
Look at this here.
Yeah, right here. Oh, you want to go here now?
About this.
I love that you brought that up. That's so funny, because we were just having this really nice theological discussion last night. So it always comes full circle. It always does.
Yeah, there's things that work.
And it's amazing too, though, because there are churches that either won't acknowledge mental illness, and even though I would really love for neurodivergence to stop being called a mental illness, because it's just how we're wired. It's just we're wired differently. And I suppose neurodivergence is a way of not saying mental illness. Not that that's bad either, but it's just, I don't think it's an appropriate term here. But some churches and some organizations, there's even some ones, I won't say which, but Leah Remini knows a lot about them, that don't believe in such things. And it's like, these people won't get any help for these conditions, and it can have really bad repercussions depending on the severity.
Well,
I'm a fan of those people.
I'm a huge fan of Tom Cruise movies, but I'm not signing up for Mindhead. I'm not signing up for that. This has been fantastic. We could go another 2-3 hours. You're definitely our people. Let's do this again also. And but I really appreciate you both coming on, and I like what you said about walking away from mental illness, and even the neurodivergence is almost like a step, but like it's almost like we're all, and not to sound Pollyanna, but we're all snowflakes. We're all different, and not snowflakes even has a bad term now, but we're all different, and we're all neurodivergent to some degree. And just, I think if we really just want to try to love one another and try to understand each other and communicate rather than being selfish and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna feel better about myself by crushing you."
Right.
I think we could get there. Any final thoughts or final words of wisdom or for our friends out there before we sign off?
If you know somebody who has ADHD, just be patient with them and be honest with them. Because half the time we are wondering what you are thinking, and we can have 100 scenarios going on in our head and they can all be wrong. So don't be afraid to talk to us. Or if we do something that annoys you or something, just tell us, because it's not going to be the end of the world, you know? And also thank you, Swank, for being supportive. And if your partner has ADHD or is neurodivergent anyway, please be supportive and loving like this man here. Put in the time, it's worth it.
Not all heroes wear capes. Some have really cool beards.
Oh, yes. The glorious beard.
Epic. All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. This is Mental Health Mondays for Swank and Kitty and the kids. This is Mind Runner, a.k.a. Aaron. And have a great week.
You too.
Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.